Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and we have our co-host Blake returning this week to chat all about The Rising Storm, which is the latest second sequel to, well, it's actually the first sequel, but the second official Del Rey novel in the High Republic storyline, written by Cavan Scott. This book came out about a month and a half ago now. It's taken us a little while to get through it, and we're going to dive headfirst into this book and chat about the second wave from the first phase of the High Republic initiative, as well as all about this new KOTOR remake. Let's do it.
Another happy landing.
Peace is a lie. That is what the Sith believe. They promise power. Now they wield it. We face the greatest Sith in generations. They must be stopped.
That was the trailer for the newly announced remake of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic for the PlayStation Gaming reveal. Welcome back, Blake. What do you think
Hello
of this
there.
KOTOR remake?
It's what I've been wanting since we heard that Disney bought Lucasfilm and EA was making games. I'm like, EA owns BioWare. BioWare made KOTOR. We're going to get KOTOR. And that was like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
You know,
between the more recent news about EA no longer holding a Star Wars exclusive license and then this KOTOR news, as well as a lot of the content that we've been getting from Disney Plus, like The Mandalorian, etc., they're definitely doing better after a decade of disappointment, shall we say? I don't know.
It's crazy to think that EA, this massive conglomerate corporation who owns like tens, like maybe like 30 different game studios at this point.
Yeah, they're doing a lot.
Over the lifespan of the contract, which was like 8 to 10 years, put out like 3 games.
Yeah, it was brutal.
It's insane. Brutal. Like, how many? Okay, I want to know the actual math of this. From when EA got the contract till now, how many Assassin's Creed games came out?
Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, just Ubisoft Assassin's Creed, because they pump those things out, man.
That's a good question.
Because that's just one studio.
Yeah, let's look this up because I'm curious. Yeah, because this is their stuff too, right? No, Ubisoft is a different studio.
Yeah, that's Activision.
I'm thinking of a different one. So, okay, so in the franchise, ever since the purchase of, well, let's say 2013 for like the end, I guess, of the Lucasfilm kind of independent era and the Disney era, which is when the paperwork finalized. There's been 7 Assassin's Creed games.
That's more than the Star Wars games that come out.
Those are the staple games. And then there's been 8 spin-offs, like smaller spin-offs, whether it's mobile or console. So a lot. It's been a lot, and way more than Star Wars. I mean, EA primarily, they put out 4 staple games, which was Battlefront, Battlefront 2, Jedi Fallen Order, and then Star Wars Squadrons. That was their main slate, not to mention all the DLC that the Old Republic has been providing over the years. Anything else? I mean, there's been a couple mobile games, I guess. Galaxy Heroes. That's it.
It's crazy, honestly. Like EA owns so many companies. If each company put out one game, so like from the moment they started till now, we would have like 20 or 30 games. Like, but I know they canceled probably just as many games that would have matched Activision's Assassin's Creed, but I don't know, what a mess.
No, it's a crying shame, and you know, and more recently, I know there's been a lot of news about Espire and you know, a studio like that. There's been the resurrection, of course, of Star Wars Pod Racer, which relaunched as an
I'm
HD
excited for that
version on Nintendo Switch. It came out as a relaunch game, as well as Republic Commando. I believe that was also coming out as a relaunch on Nintendo Switch. So it's almost like they're taking these older games that people actually do love and kind of relaunching them exclusively on various consoles.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, because those are games that people actually like, unlike a lot of the stuff they're making.
Yeah, exactly. And now finally, we have BioWare taking KOTOR, which is one of the most, I guess, one of the most respected games in the gaming community, and they're relaunching that on PlayStation 5. So, you know, anyone who has a PlayStation 5 is going to be very happy that this game is coming out on your platform. So anyone with a PC, I believe this game is it may or may not come out. They haven't really confirmed, as far as I know, whether or not this will be launched on PC as well. If it does, however, I'm definitely gonna be picking that up, because I'm not a console gamer necessarily, and I don't really want to buy a PlayStation just to play one game, as much as I love the Spider-Man games. And I know they announced 2 of those today. They announced a Wolverine game and a second Spider-Man game. So, you know, a lot of cool stuff coming out on the PlayStation platform as far as franchises that I'm really fond of. But I don't know if it's enough for me to actually go out and, you know, drop $600 on a console. So,
well, it's weird to me that it's only on PlayStation 5, because it was originally created to be a PC game and then was modified to be on original Xbox. And a lot of people bought Xbox to play this game because it was the first Star Wars role-playing game that's pretty open world to be made, especially on the new consoles. Because really before that, it was just side scrollers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes hand in hand, I guess, with the initiative that, like what I was saying earlier, with Pod Racer and Republic Commando being relaunched on Switch. It feels like they're taking these old games and these old titles, refreshing them somehow. This one obviously they're putting the most work into this one, but refreshing them and relaunching them on an exclusive platform. I hope that's not the case for this one, because like you, I'm very much a PC gamer, preferably. So, you know, I hope that they do end up, I guess, maybe a delayed release at least.
Yeah.
But
Lucasfilm has been known to do this. I still haven't played Star Wars Bounty Hunter because it was only on PS2.
That's true, actually. That was a console exclusive license. I still haven't played. I used to have a PlayStation 2, but just never owned the game, and still haven't played it. A buddy of mine had it, and I kind of played a few minutes of it on his console, but it wasn't anything extensive. So,
man, I want to play that one. Looks good. But back on KOTOR, I'm wondering what they're gonna do to update it, because I'm a huge fan of KOTOR, but I played it back in the day, and if you've ever played it, it is a very old school mechanic system where it's turn-based. So it's actually, it runs more like a Pokemon game than a console game.
Right.
It's like you pause time, you pick what attack you want, and then you unpause time, and then you and the other guy both do like whatever action, and then you pause time again. You pick what you want to do. It's very slow paced, and it's based on D&D, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons, where you would pick what attack, you would roll your dice, you'd see if you hit, you roll for damage, and all this based on mechanical stats, which are exactly the same as this game.
Yeah, the MMO Star Wars: The Old Republic works a lot more fast paced, where you're just constantly clicking keyboard, buttons to activate all your different powers and everything like that. And
like all MMOs, which are all just based on World of Warcraft now. You have a bunch of different buttons. You choose where you want them. You can keybind them to different buttons on your keyboard, and you just keep mashing that button and it works on like a 1 second global cooldown. Yeah.
Very typical hack and slash, run around. And there's a lot more combat, I guess, because of that. It's so easy to put, little fights here and there.
But that's the thing. Like, those are all PC games. So you have a keyboard to bind all of your different attacks. So if this is on PlayStation, I don't know how they're going to get around the time stop, which is what they had to do for Xbox.
Right. Yeah. And it does pose a series of questions. I know the PlayStation does have that touchpad built into the controller, and that could possibly unlock a bit more potential as far as, different little menus and stuff that you can swipe up and flick over to different things. And I know they did that with the Spider-Man game, and that touchpad basically acted as your controller for his mobile cell phone and whatever gadget he was carrying, and you could flip through the different screens and everything like that. So it was it's kind of a shame, because I emulated that game on PlayStation, the PlayStation streaming service. They put Spider-Man up there for like 2 months or something, so I subscribed for a month just to play the game, and on PC, but I was doing it with an Xbox controller. And when it came time in the tutorial, you had to press this touchpad to get this thing open. I wasn't able to do it. So I had to download like a hack, which basically turns the select button on the controller of the Xbox controller into the touchpad activation thing, because you didn't need to swipe through these things. All you had to do is swipe up on the touchpad. That's it, just to unlock the menu. That's all you need. So it basically unlocked the menu for you, and then you could use the sticks to navigate through what you needed, which was fine.
Slight oversight on Sony's part there.
Yeah, it was such an oversight, and I was like, this sucks. Like, there's no way I'm buying a controller just to play on the streaming service that I'm already paying for, like, for a month, right? So, Sony reminds me a lot of Apple, like, not very compatible with stuff. So I don't know.
I always thought that was Nintendo.
Nintendo is very much like that too. I mean, very much kind of in their own little bubble. But
yeah, they're all like that now.
Whereas like Xbox, and Xbox being a Windows or Microsoft product, there's so many games that you can buy on both platforms now. Like players who've always owned a PlayStation who have a Windows PC can now buy Halo, the Master Chief Collection, on their computer, and that's a really big perk, because not only is it cross-compatible with Xbox consoles, but you have the advantage of these HD refreshed versions of these legacy Xbox exclusive games, right?
The only one that is about time, because they released the original Halo Combat Evolved in 2001, I think. Yeah, they released that on PC. Yeah. And then they didn't release anything else.
Right. And it was PC and the original Xbox, and then everything else after that. I guess they wanted to push the console game, so exclusives kind of became a thing. And today they're like basically what holds PlayStation in the lead for number one console on the market. I mean, you can hardly even find one in a store. So I mean, not that I'm like, okay, personally, I prefer the feel of an Xbox controller, but I've never really been like Xbox is better kind of thing. Like, I don't really care. Like, I prefer gaming on PC. I love doing stuff in VR. I'm very much away from the whole console game at this point, and all I know is exclusives can be very annoying. So this whole KOTOR thing, to get back to that label, the fact that it's a PlayStation 5 exclusive, I hope it's temporary. I really hope it's temporary, because I know there's a lot of fans out there who are Star Wars fans who love Star Wars so much, and this will be aside from the refreshed versions of the Switch versions of Pod Racer and Republic Commando, this is kind of like way more money went into this. You can totally tell. Like they've made a whole new trailer and everything like that. It looks like it's going to be like the base code might be similar, but everything's going to be like new, right? And
That's
as far as like
I'm curious if they're going to change the combat stuff, because the
Yeah.
company that made it, the next game they made was Mass Effect. And so Mass Effect was based on the KOTOR engine. So they still had like stats and stuff, but they modified it so it wasn't turn-based anymore. I think you could still do that for some of the abilities. Like you still could like switch through, kind of had the toggle system, but it was like live interactive shooter as well.
yeah.
So I'm hoping they do something like that. I know it gets trickier with like lightsabers, because like maybe
It
start
does. Yeah.
feeling more like just hacking the X button,
Yeah,
X button
like
or whatever to
like-
swing, but
Right, like Jedi Fallen Order or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's tough to say what they will do as far as giving this game a makeover. But the fact that remake is in the title of this game tells me that it's like the spirit of the game will be there, the story will all be there, but maybe even expanded. Maybe if there's segments of the game that they never finished before, they'll be able to put that in, finish the game, make it as if it was like came out today on next gen consoles.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why this is a PlayStation 5 thing, and the fact that they haven't said this is coming out on our last platform like PlayStation 4. This is going to utilize next gen graphics. So
that'll be super cool.
My
Because
my imagination
honestly,
points towards a whole like overhaul.
because without even knowing this trailer is coming out or announcement, I've actually been replaying KOTOR just because it's a good game.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm past Terrace, which is the beginning planet. It's like the longest. I went to the Dantooine, got my Jedi training, finished Tatooine, now I'm out on Kashyyyk. So I'm roughly halfway into the game, like maybe a third to halfway. And this trailer comes out. So I'm like, man, like this is like Destiny.
Destiny? Yeah, no kidding. Mind you, you've been playing that game constantly for nearly 12 years since the license got bought. So
I play it once a year.
Yeah,
So-
once a year.
Yeah, but I know a lot of the cheats and glitches now, so you can like,
You can rush through it.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So those
You
cheats
can
and
make-
glitches.
You can make it easier.
Yeah. You can be sure in the new version that those cheats and glitches are going to be gone.
Yeah, they're not going to work.
No.
People are playing it. One of my favorites bugs you can use. You got to time it right. But right as you become a Jedi, you can actually use a bug to make all of your companions Jedi. So you can have Zalbar and Mission, and you can have Karth. Like your entire crew can just all be Jedi. So they're all just like really powerful.
There's a thing about these refreshed games, or these remakes, I guess you could call them, is that as much as they are loved and respected by people like us, who like I've got the CD-ROM from like back then, right? And they're loved for a reason. And these hacks and glitches kind of add to the character of the game.
Yeah, I
and
think so too.
A reason why you love it. So as cool as it is to be like, dude, there's a remake coming. It's going to be awesome. It's got like next gen graphics, all this stuff. It's going to be like, all this deleted stuff that they couldn't put in the final build is going to be in there, and this and that, whatever. There's always going to be an element that feels missing to it. And that's the fact that the original is still and always going to be the original.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know, to add to that, like bugs that aren't game breaking, I think they should just leave in. Because the problem nowadays, because everything's connected to the internet, they just every time something's discovered, they just patch it, and I hate that.
Yeah,
like,
a week later, it's gone.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's fun. Like to me, even this was like the beginning of patches and stuff, but you can still get away with some of the bugs. So like in Skyrim, everyone's played that game. It's been around forever. There's a bug, if you do it in the right order, you can become both a werewolf and a vampire lord. You can have both, which you're not supposed to be able to, because when you get one, it makes you immune to the other. But if you like bug it just right, you can have both. Stuff like that.
Nice.
It's like, it's fun because you can kind of be like an underworld sort of thing. But
yeah. There's no hope of that, even especially on a console, right? Like where
that
you
was on
can't
console.
download. It's like, oh, that was on console. Oh wow, okay.
But like this game came out in 2011, 2012, right? When it first came out. Yeah. I was doing this bug in like 2012, 2013, I think.
Oh, okay. All right.
But the point I'm getting at is nowadays they patch stuff so fast.
They do, yeah, and that's not to say that that it's any excuse for them to release an incomplete game, because I know that's a very pressing issue in today's industry.
Saying. There's a difference between a bug that makes it so you can't play the game and a bug that adds a gimmick that's a little bit cheaty, but you have the choice to do it or not.
Right. Yeah. Like a non-intrusive bug.
Yeah.
Like, right. Those are welcome.
Exactly.
All right, let's dive into this.
One last thing, because to me, that's like playing the old Nintendo games or Sega, and you like get the cheat code. Like it's kind of the same idea, right? Right.
Yeah. I remember doing that, and you know, on the Game Boy games that I used to play, Star Wars, the Droid Factory game with Anakin Skywalker that takes place after Episode 2. Non-canon story, of course, at this point. Really cool game, though. That had cheat codes as well to jump to levels and stuff that, you know, you wouldn't need to manually walk to all the time. And it was pretty sweet. I was able to, when I discovered the internet had codes out there for this game, because I was like, where on earth do these codes exist, right? And then when I figured it out, I was like, no way. Like this forum was just pure gold. And then I typed in the codes, like, it works. Just the magic of like something like that, right? And anyone out there smiling at a similar memory, you know, we can share that fondness.
Back in the day when you had to like get Xbox magazine or Nintendo magazine to get all that stuff.
Oh, totally. And recently, I'm not going to say how or ethically, but I acquired every single Star Wars Insider dating back to 1987 on digital form. And and I'm actually looking forward to rifling through these older ones and seeing kind of what kind of golden content's in there that, you know, maybe I missed, because the first Insider copy that I owned was from, I think it was from 2004 or something like that. It was a while ago. But I didn't realize just how long that this magazine has been published for. Like, I didn't realize the first issue was published in 1987, celebrating Star Wars A New Hope's 10th anniversary. And the front of the cover is R2 and 3PO holding a birthday cake with 10 candles on it. And at the time, it was called the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine. And it ran for 22 issues before it was relabeled as Star Wars Insider. So pretty crazy. I don't know, just fun fact there.
Are collectible now.
I bet, yeah. If anyone has the physical copies of these old Lucasfilm magazines, especially the Star Wars Insider was relabeled for issue number 23 onwards, and now we're on issue number like 204 is the latest one on the shelf. But if anyone out there owns one of those first 22 issues, I'm sure it's probably worth something in the right hands. So you got something good there. Let's dive into this book here. I know KOTOR we could chat about all night. It's one of the fan favorite games of all time.
Well, but I was playing it up to the point where we started the podcast. So
right.
The biggest Star Wars publishing event of all time begins a bold new chapter. In an age of peace and unity, Jedi allies protect the Republic as worlds align in celebration, but they face a battle on two fronts. A monstrous terror that consumes all in its path, and vengeful marauders ready to strike back. The Knights of the High Republic must defend against these merciless enemies. The Jedi will be tested in this pivotal moment in the High Republic as the epic saga continues.
All right, so Star Wars, the High Republic, The Rising Storm. This is a direct sequel to Light of the Jedi, which we had an extensive review, and this one's not nearly going to be as long mostly because I think that episode was like nearing 3 hours or something like that. And
wow.
it was a longer one. That's all I remember. And I remember Bryce, he read that one with us and reviewed it with us in that episode. And when we were finished the recording, he's like, dude, that was long. And I was like, yeah, I think that was the recommendation. I just dumped it all in one episode, but
dang,
you know,
it was it
was it was the first you know, is the beginning of a new era, right? So, you know, there's a lot to kind of chat about, you know, everything from the designs of the ships all the way down to the designs of the weapons and everything that kind of goes with that. So there's a lot less to go on here now that we've already got most of that out of the way. But
I agree with that. Before we get too into the book, I just want to say that I love that trailer sounded like a Lego Star Wars ad from like 2003. Do you remember those?
The deep voice. Yeah, I vaguely remember what you're talking about.
And people like playing with like Lego ships and like flying over your bed.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you can see the kid's hand on the back of the yeah.
It's the same narrator.
Right. Yeah, I totally remember those. They don't do those anymore.
No, they don't, which is disappointing. I love those ads.
Yeah. Should dig up some of those old we'll do a podcast episode just reminiscing over these old trailers and like, you know, stuff that just got us amped up about stuff, you know.
That's how you know we're old.
Oh yeah, exactly. We're fans that grew up in the prequel era. I mean, like it's tough to, I don't know what the demographic of our audience is, but I'd be willing to bet that maybe half of our listeners could potentially be, you know, people who grew up with the sequels as their Star Wars movies.
We also grew up with the digital releases of the original trilogy in the 90s. I still remember the ads for the toys for that.
Right. Yeah. Actually, a coworker of ours, a friend of ours from a previous employer, had at one point given me this poster. He used to work in a video store back in the 90s. And he gave me his poster of the Star Wars Special Edition VHS releases. And that's cool. The giant like poster cardboard thing. Yeah, it's a bit you know, torn up a little bit. There was some dents and it was peeling and stuff. So I don't actually know if I ended up keeping that or not because it was just in bad condition. But it was cool, and you know, I kept it in the movie room for a little while, and you know, it was nice and relic of the past, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Of course,
sweet.
Nowadays, if you ask anyone who's born past the year 2005, they're not even going to know what a VHS is.
Yeah, so. Dude, growing up, I had a VHS recording that recorded Yogi Bear Easter on cable. And it still had all the ads because it was just a straight rip on the VHS.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The ads were Taco Bell and the 90s re-release special editions of Star Wars toys. So I would rewatch this recording of Yogi Bear Easter like every year, sometimes multiple times because I thought it was really great for some reason. So I just rewatched these ads of the old Star Wars toys for original trilogy.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was pretty sweet.
Was it the Power of the Force action figure lineup? Or what kind of Star Wars?
I remember specifically it was for Empire Strikes Back. So it was like a snow speeder, and then there was like AT-AT.
For the action figures, right?
Yeah, like the 90s toys. So it was kind of styled after the old 70s, 80s toys, but just new molds.
Okay, yeah. That's cool. That's pretty awesome. I wonder if that exists on YouTube somewhere. Otherwise, you might have you might have a golden egg in there. You know, you have to transfer that to digital and upload it for the world
it's gonna be rough, but yeah.
Yeah.
The old Taco Bell ads with the cat and the dog. Yeah. Taco Bell, dong.
So this book, might as well just start off with the summary or the publisher summary, and then we can chat about our thoughts here and get into the details. So in the wake of the great disaster and the heroism of the Jedi, the Republic continues to grow, bringing more worlds together under a single unified banner. Led by Chancellor Lina So, the spirit of unity extends throughout the galaxy, with the Jedi and newly established Starlight Beacon Station at the vanguard. In celebration, the Chancellor plans the Republic Fair, a showcase of the possibility and peace of the expanding Republic, a precept the Jedi hope to foster. Stellan Gios, Bel Zettifar, Elzar Mann, and others join the event as ambassadors of harmony. But as the eyes of the galaxy turn toward the fair, so too does the fury of the Nihil. Their leader, Marchion Ro, is intent on destroying this spirit of unity. His storm descends on the pageantry and celebration, sowing chaos and exacting revenge. As the Jedi struggle to curb the carnage of the rampaging Nihil, they come face to face with the true fear their enemy plans to unleash across the galaxy. The kind of fear that even the Force cannot shield them from. So there's a lot to digest here, but I'm just going to say it off the bat. The first half of this book was boring.
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah. So this book, ironically enough, in contrast to me saying that, has been getting really good reviews, and people have been saying what a fantastic book this is, and how it kept them on the edge of their seat like the entire time. I'm just gonna be straight up about this.
When the first half of the book was talking about a fair, it didn't have the villains practically at all. I don't know.
I know. I'm just gonna say it straight up, just for anyone who wants the honest opinion of both of us here. We've both listened to it or read it, and the first 50% on my e-reader, it wasn't until I hit 53% that things started to get interesting. And the first half of the book is like the planning of the Republic Fair, a lot of build up. And not build up in an interesting way. Like there's build up that's intense, and there's build up that's just not interesting. And I didn't feel engaged enough to enjoy the first half of this novel. It was also very long, like way longer than Light of the Jedi. It felt like.
I felt like they spent most of the book just describing the fair for like 50 chapters. And it just kept going on and on. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do like a world fair, right? I think it was like a 19th century world fair, like it traveled around. And the idea is cool, but to me, unless you're going to do a murder mystery like Sherlock Holmes style, it's just not an interesting setting.
The Republic Fair is, how do you describe it? Just a way to kind of show the outer rim that the Republic is for everyone, kind of thing. It's like a political statement.
Yeah, it's based on the World's Fair, same as what we had here in the 19th century, which was, in this case, different planets, but on Earth it was like different countries and stuff, all getting together and like kind of showing the culture of all the different environments, different peoples, try to get exposure to everyone. You could see like, oh, we want to visit this place or planet, that sort of thing. And it's a celebration, and this is a big thing. You're thankful to have read it, because in the audiobook that I did, Audible, the song, for example, that they sing in there, they actually sung it, and it was terrible. So I just want to say the audio, the recording, like it is the cringiest song I have heard in a long time.
I gotta say, the one thing I found interesting about at least the start, was in chapter 8 there was like a little quote. I forget who it was from, but here actually I think I have it saved. So Stellan Geos, I believe, said this. We have seen a drop in Nihil activity in the last few months, especially in the system surrounding Valo. We believe those strike forces still in operation and were mere remnants of the main fleet we engaged in the Kerr Nebula nearly a year ago. So in Light of the Jedi, there's that big battle with the Nihil, and at the very end, Kassav, one of the Tempest runners of the Nihil, perishes with his whole storm. I think that the Jedi think, because a couple months have gone by and Marchion Ro hasn't really struck any new attack or anything on the Republic, so they would think like, oh, maybe that was the last of them, right? So it's safe to have the Republic Fair again, right? And some people are torn about that, but the Chancellor is like, no, it's totally fine, like we can have this fair and we're going to do it anyways, and it'll all be good. And
we should quickly share what the structure is for the Nihil, because the wording is kind of confusing. So a Tempest runner is like a fleet captain or ship captain. Yeah. And group. Is it Cloud or Storm?
Sorry. Yeah. So I think it's their Cloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so like their immediate stuff would be the Cloud, and then the next one up. So that'd be like their squad, and then like the battalion would be their Storm.
The Storm. Yeah. Something like that. And then the leader of everything is the Eye, which is Marchion Ro. And
well, it's supposed to be like a triad.
He kind of takes leadership, and the Tempest Runners aren't too happy about that. So the other thing I was going to mention about the beginning of this book is his leadership is in question, and Lorna D and Pan Eta, who's both two of the three Tempest Runners under Marchion Ro, attempt a coup against him, and they kind of fail through the course of the book to kind of undermine his leadership.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out well for them.
Well, how it's kind of set up for the Storms, or the Tempest Runners, all of it together it's strength conquers all. So you can challenge essentially to move your way up. Like, so if you're the best warrior, you're the leader, right? So people, you would kill the leader and you assume the position of the leader. It's a very dog eat dog system. But then Marchion Ro, he's kind of off to the side, not really involved in that, because he knows he has the advantage of knowing these different routes and stuff that allow them to have the advantage that they do. In the last book, I think at the end, he claims rule over all of it, as opposed to them all having equal share in power. And in this one, the three Tempest Runners that we brought up, they, it's a dog-eat-dog warrior system. So they want this Marchion Ro is taking leadership. They want to overthrow him. And so the guy who the book really follows closest, Pan, he's kind of a tough, meat-headed guy. Thinks, I'm the best, I'm the strongest.
Yeah, he's pretty bitter.
Yeah. And so he's especially bitter more than the other two Tempest Runners against Marchion, because he thinks he deserves to be the leader. So it ends up being these warriors who are fight first, ask questions later. You fight for what you earn. He's trying to overthrow the guy who is just always one step ahead, because he's the clever one, who's Marchion. So that's kind of the dynamic that's going on amongst them.
Yeah. I should mention, if I didn't before, this is a spoiler-centric review. So anyone who's interested in learning all about this book and not reading it, you're in the right place. There's one other thing about Marchion Ro, which I thought was, for the course of the book, this kind of extends through his arc. Since he's claimed leadership over the Nihil, he's had this obsession with completing a task that his father could never finish, who had a bit of an objective to, he was very into relics and things of the past and whatever else. There's a creature, apparently, or a beast, also known as a weapon through the course of the book, which is referred to as the Leveler. And it's this ancient beast, apparently, that has a very negative effect on Force users. And Marchion Ro is actually after this creature in order to control it and use it as a weapon against the Jedi, which, spoiler again, by the end of the book, he manages to succeed in this mission where his father never could. That was one of the more interesting things about this novel. I thought this was kind of playing into this. Star Wars is always very much about the creatures, and ever since ever since the original films, the movies have always had this thing with animals. Like there's always like a alien creature or beast or whatever coming out and trying to eat somebody or whatever, right? There's always something like that. And this book was no different. It very much embraced that side of Star Wars lore and just kind of took it in. And the first thing I thought of when I heard the description of this Leveler beast was that the lizard thing or whatever that Thrawn uses in the expanded universe novels to block force powers, right? Like these lizards have a way of repelling the force.
To me, in the book, that's what it was. It was basically just a rehash of that, because I don't think it affects their minds. I think that's just what we gathered from the character who was affected by it, because he's a race of this bird species who they're all tied to the Force, and they don't actively use the Force like a Jedi, but they subconsciously use it for navigation and a slight level of seeing into the future for defensive purposes. So they're always like they have a quick reaction time, essentially. And what happens in the book is Markion and this bird creature, they kind of go down to the tunnels or whatever, and then they get attacked by this lizard thing. And the bird, who always manages to survive because of his Brace's ability with the Force, he gets hit or attacked by the lizard, and he's at a total loss of like how he didn't see it coming. And then Markion's like kind of reveals like, oh, it worked, as in he had heard rumors that this would happen, but he needed to drag this bird guy down there to see if the rumors were true. And by him dying, they kind of confirmed that the Force is blocked. I didn't realize it was a lizard thing itself that did it, though. I thought it was something in the tunnels, like a thing.
The lizard thing I referred to is from the Thrawn novels. This thing is different completely.
It's like an octopus thing, isn't it?
I don't really know. The description of it's always kind of a little not too accurate, at least from my memory, but. It's the lizard it reminded me of the lizards that Thrawn uses in the Heir to the Empire trilogy as a way of fighting off Jedi, right? And this beast was almost no different. It was just a creature being exploited for its potential to affect Force users or people with a high midichlorian count. And this bird creature, I think his name's Din, or Den or something like that. He's kind of Marchion Ro's test subject as far as seeing if this beast can actually kill him, right? And sure enough, it does. So he's able to use this beast again at the end of the book, which we'll kind of get into in a little bit. But that was one of the more interesting parts of this novel. Elzar Mann, who is one of the main characters, one of the main Jedi in this novel, who's also now a marshal of the Temple on Valo. He's one of the main dominating characters of this book. I would say that Elzar Mann is easily becoming one of the more likable characters of the series. And
well, it's funny because he's basically Anakin.
Yeah, he is a little bit. He's kind of he's tasting the dark side a little bit. He uses some aggressive tactics when the Nihil strike on Valo. And is worried for himself for tapping into those dark powers a little bit, and gives into his emotions, right? And so he is a bit like a wavering kind of soul in a sense, and he's also plagued by these nightmares, these visions of what at the end of the book is confirmed to be this leveler beast killing like everybody that he knows. And he's being plagued by visions. So he's kind of got this dual complete, like he's definitely has an Anakin complex about him, where he's being plagued by nightmares and therefore kind of giving into his inner emotions to fight the enemy, whoever it is. And he's kind of losing himself along the way.
One of the few Jedi we know to have sex.
Yeah, with like more than one person. So apparently he's got in with Avar Kriss. And another
weird. They talked about that because they were Padawans at the time. They're like really young, which is
like 19, weird. 18. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, huh.
Yeah.
It's the first time
behind closed doors.
Yeah, it was the first time. I was kind of taken aback when I read it. I was like, did that just say what I thought it said?
Me too, because that's unheard of in Star Wars lore.
Yeah. Okay. So here it's in chapter 40. It says he'd neglected his duties, seeking out Samira's bed rather than remaining vigilant. It wasn't the sex that meant nothing. It was the realization that he had let everyone down for a moment of pleasure. Very odd.
It's very Anakin, though.
It feels very Anakin, and also doesn't feel like it belongs in a Star Wars book. But, it is what it is. So
50 Shades of Star Wars.
50 Shades of Force. Oh, 50 Shades of Elzar.
Oh, gosh. Honestly, I can't hear the name Elzar without thinking about Futurama. He's the really high class chef with the four arms.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
He's Elzar. Bam.
Elzar. So yeah, Elzar, one of the more main characters in the book. I thought that was kind of cool. Ty Yorick also has a bit of a story arc in this novel, and anyone who hears these names and is like, I don't know who you're talking about, there is concept artwork of every single one of these characters online on StarWars.com on the High Republic tab, and they have in the past on the Star Wars YouTube channel released character profile videos on a weekly basis through the summer. So a character like Ty Yorick has like a 1 minute or 40-second video and it introduces you to like kind of her past and her story kind of thing. So Ty Yorick is like a previous kind of reminded me of Ventress, like was once trained by a Jedi, but was also kind of forgotten when she kind of got lost and is kind of doing her own thing now. And she's a saber for hire. That's very Ventressy, actually. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, very Ventressy, except she's not like a dark side person. She's just kind of like doing whatever it takes to get money and stay employed, and uses her lightsaber and her force abilities to do the job. Very much
after she became a bounty hunter.
Yeah, pretty much. So Ty Yorick reminds me a lot of her, and Ty Yorick is a very gender neutral name. It is a she, and she has a purple lightsaber, which is kind of cool. And she joins the Jedi in this fight against the Nihil when they strike on Valo at the Republic Fair, reluctantly at first, but then realizes, it's the right thing to do. And she joins with a bunch of Padawans. She also makes a very strong connection with Elzar, who kind of convinces her to help. And I could see this going in a sense of like Elzar taking her on as a Padawan again.
Yeah, I could see that being
in the next book, maybe. Yeah,
I thought by the end of this book that was going to happen.
Yeah, I did too. So maybe we'll see something develop there in the future.
Because after Elzar gives in to the dark side and like uses it to give himself enough strength to like he throws an entire like floating island.
Yeah.
He used the dark side to give him strength to do that. Then he immediately regrets it, and he wants Ty to stick around to help keep him in check because he doesn't think he can do it himself. He needs someone else there to basically keep an eye on him. Yeah, exactly. But she's probably the worst person to possibly do that because she clearly would have done the same thing. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Amongst the battle, it's also worth noting that Stellan Gios, who's a Jedi Master, he protects the Chancellor and the other politicians in the attack. And by the end of the attack, he's kind of recognized as a hero through the whole thing because there's a holocam footage of him that's taken during the battle of him holding, spoiler again, the Chancellor kind of is alluded to be dead at one point, and then it turns out she's fine. But he's like cradling her kind of limp, unconscious body. And that footage, along with him helping the politicians and such, and as they're like limping down the street or whatever, is kind of used as a galaxy-wide picture, like almost like in the war effort, there's like very famous photos of like children standing alone in the street during World War II or whatever, right? And it's like their parents are probably dead and they're all alone, right? So it's kind of like that, like it's a promotional thing, like the horrendous thing that just happened, the tragedy that just occurred at the Republic Fair, demolished by the Nihil, and casualties and losses everywhere, thousands of people dead, all that stuff. And that image of Stellan is kind of used as like the promotional for that. So it's worth noting that this might come up in the future again as like a thing. He's might be like, you know, galaxy-wide famous dude going forward. So
yeah, because were we introduced to that guy in the previous book?
Yeah.
We were.
Yeah,
okay.
he showed up in the previous book. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's from Elzar's perspective. I remember a chapter where they meet up because it's like the two of them and then Avar Kriss are like the trilogy or whatever, like they're three amigos.
Yeah.
And he talks about seeing this guy again, and Elzar feels that he's become more of a politician than a Jedi.
Right.
Very
right.
Count Dooku-esque, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone who's looking at the cover of the book, I believe Elzar Mann is front and center with the crossguard saber. Ty York is the one on the left, and Bell Zettifar is the one on the right. So just a heads up, if any of you guys are wondering what these characters might look like, that would be Elzar, Ty, and Bell. And Pan and Lorna, like I mentioned, they failed to take control from Marchion Ro. What I thought was really cool, though, is the secret of the paths is finally revealed to the Nihil. So the secret gets out that they're using a woman for a source of where and how the ships in the Nihil fleet can jump in hyperspace routes that nobody else knows about. And the only part of the secret that isn't revealed to the rest of the Nihil is the fact that she is a Santeca. But it is revealed that that's where the paths are coming from. So it's no longer a secret, because that was Marchion Ro's kind of like one and only card up his sleeve. And then when Pan reveals that, he thinks like, oh, the Nihil are mine now. Like, I'm going to undermine Marchion and reveal his secret and be like, no, we don't need him anymore, because like that's the only card that he has to play. And now we know it's just this old woman, so he's nothing, right? Like he doesn't pull the paths out of his head. It's actually from this woman. All we need is the woman. We can run the whole organization without him, right? And he just comes in out of nowhere and completely left field Pan. And I really loved that scene because it just makes Pan look more incompetent. At any time he tries to undermine Marchion Ro, he just fails miserably. And
he does
Marchion
it twice.
and he's got the right words to say and everything. And he completely is like, yeah, so what? Like, I do have this woman who gives me this and that, but then he goes on and makes some like other reasons as to why they need Marchion or whatever, and he does it so gracefully. Like, and this guy is honestly like such a great villain. Like, he's been written so well and collaborated over. Like, you can tell that a lot of time has gone into developing this character, more so than a lot of others.
No, I agree with that. To be honest, he's probably the only character I actually really enjoy.
Yeah, Marchion Ro is very interesting. Yeah. And through the course of the book, it's also worth mentioning at the very end of the last book, a Jedi, Loden Greatstorm, which is Bell's master, is taken captive by Marchion Ro, and his yellow lightsaber is held by Marchion through pretty much 90% of the book. And Greatstorm is still in captive and being tortured and experimented on or whatever else, right up until the end. So I'll just finish out these two last little points here, and then we can kind of get into the ending of the book, I guess, if you want. Bell, they stage a bit of a rescue mission once they find out he's alive, and Bell helps recover Loden Greatstorm. But then in the process of escaping the location that they're in, which is a Nihil kind of ship or whatever, Marchion Ro unleashes the Leveler, and Bell witnesses the Leveler kill Loden Greatstorm, his master. And basically what happens is this creature is able to turn Loden Greatstorm into a stone-like figure, and then he basically dissolves into nothing, like into ash. So it's a very weird way of, it's like a natural ability, I guess, for him to, first he gets rendered as like a vegetable and like freezes, and then he turns to stone, and then he just dissolves. So it's like a really weird like thing. And apparently it only works on Force users, which is why Marchion Ro seeked this beast out earlier on in the book. And he manages to kill Loden Greatstorm with this figure at the very end, and
That's
tragic moment. So
it's strange. It's very similar to like Greek mythology.
great. Oh, like with the Kraken or something like that.
It's what's the name?
Or
of that?
Medusa, maybe.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like look at it, you turn to a stone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of the same idea, but I guess.
Yeah,
Only
through
if
reverberations in the Force or whatever. Yeah.
I wonder if it's only if you use the Force or if you have it, because it could be like if you can't use the Force when you're around it.
I don't really know. It's also worth mentioning beyond the fact that now the enemy has this beast, which points at the very last sentence of the book. I think it's from Stellan Gios's point of view, and for the first time since childhood, it says he was scared after seeing what he sees, right? And the Niles become a really big threat at this point. And this entire book is kind of like the Empire Strikes Back of the High Republic so far. It's like the enemies kind of stepped it up a notch, right? And so not only do they have this beast, the Leveler, but Marchiandro also now possesses a gadget or a weapon that was introduced at the Republic Fair by someone who had intentions to sell it to the Nihil. And it's a device that actually, it's almost like acts like an EMP. It disables electrified weapons. So it can essentially turn off lightsabers within a radius of a small radius. But any Jedi who has a lightsaber out, just boom, like blade is gone. And
yeah, I remember
Marchiandro now has this too. So not only can he turn off Jedi's lightsabers, but now he's also got a beast that kills them if they even have the Force, I guess, which is pretty nuts. Like that's the two positive things that even make a Jedi, right? So
no, it's true. That and a good moral compass.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think of it all, though, to be honest, because I'm kind of in agreement with what Dave Filoni said when he was talking about the stuff from the Thrawn books, and he mentions the lizards that block the Force.
Yeah.
And he says, like, the book has lots of good things that they really like, so they wanted to pull out of that. I think it was talking about Rebels at the time.
Yep.
It's like, but then there's also stuff like the lizards that block the Force, and like that's. He's like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of out there. Yeah, he's basically saying like that's becoming too fantasy, I guess, or too.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like George Lucas Star Wars. It starts to feel like a fantasy game.
Yeah, and so this creature being what it is, I guess, maybe has an ability to sniff out and target Force users. Now, this is where midichlorians kind of play a big part into what makes a Force user, because it's the gateway to having those abilities ever present and unlocked kind of thing for them, right? And because it's a biological thing, I could see this creature being able to sniff that out, right? Like a mosquito sniffs out blood. I could imagine this creature being able to target.
Mosquitoes sniff out CO2 because CO2 is put out by mammals that have blood.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So I could see this creature being something similar, right? Like it just knows where to find a powerful Force user, right? And maybe it's just ignorant to anyone else, which is what makes it the perfect Jedi killing weapon, or at least what it's referred to, right? I don't really know. It's only happens twice in the whole books, and not a lot of details around the event, but I don't know. My imagination points to some sort of like mental Force reverb thing that happens, and then they just kind of like, I don't know how or what turns them to ash, but it's interesting. It's kind of I'm kind of keen to know a bit more about how this works.
I don't think they'll ever reveal it. I think it's gonna be left as a thing that happens, and that's it.
Right.
I find it really funny, though, that they wiped the EU to get rid of all the weird stuff that's really out there.
Now they're just re-putting it in again.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's like we're right where we were.
I think that's kind of funny, too. There's some fun facts that I found through the course of the novel. They confirmed, so Tython, they recently canonized in The Mandalorian. Thank the heavens, or thank Dave, I guess. But in this book, they also canonized the fact that one of the moons of Tython is named Ashla, which is also the name of the Force, the light side of the Force. I guess it's like an ancient name for that. Also, the planet Valo that the Republic Fair takes place on was originally from the West End Games RPG game, which is kind of interesting. It's from one of the DLC books, I guess, which was pretty cool.
I do vaguely recognize the names. That must be where it's from.
Valo, yeah. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the comics. I've been kind of reading them slowly as they've come out every month and a half or whatever it's been. It's been a very slow burner. But at some point in the Marvel comics, Avar Kriss on one of the planets, because the reason why she's missing from this novel primarily, as well as a couple other characters from the first book, is because they're off dealing with the Drengir, which has been an ever-present other villain in this story, right? Now, this book really focuses on the Nihil, but the Drengir, as we know from the last book that we read with Reith, Silas, and the other characters that stumble upon that space station, kind of awaken these plant-like monsters. And Avar Kriss is dealing with that on the front lines of wherever she is. And she's making an alliance with the Hutts at this point in time to help fight off these Drengir in that region of space. So it's actually mentioned in this book that this Hutt alliance has happened and it's being dealt with and being discussed because obviously it's a big deal.
That could be what leads into the fact that in the prequel trilogy, there's Hutt space, which is unmaintained. It's odd that the Republic never pushes in. It takes over that territory and brings in law, whereas they just kind of leave it. So maybe that's part of the deal they're working out here to explain that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Yeah, and Hutt space is kind of in the mid to outer rim anyways. So like, even though the Republic is a lot, like it's very much pushed back by planets like Tatooine and this and that, which exists in Hutt space, but at least I think Tatooine's in Hutt space. But it's one of those things where it's like in the Clone Wars movie, which we all remember to be a very disappointing entry point to that series, as much as I love it. The plot was actually let's save Jabba's son so that the Republic is granted access to the Hutt space lanes. And it's like, why doesn't the Republic just go in? It's not like the Hutts have like fleets of ships like that they would be able to do anything about it anyways. But there is this weird kind of respect border that it's like, oh, that's Hutt space. This is Republic space. Like, we're not going to really interfere with you if you don't want to be part of us. And
it's weird because the Republic is kind of like the UN.
Yeah.
But it's like the UN isn't allowed to fly over Russia.
Right. It's like
it's a weird dynamic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because it'd be different if it was country to country, but if you have this overarching like UN style controlling government and they don't have access to a certain specific, even though they technically have significantly more power to you'd think that you'll just go through and the Hutts couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, so, exactly.
I don't know. That was never really explained. So maybe this is the reason.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, for sure.
You should point out with the bringing up the Drengir. There we go. They allude to the fact that the Nihil know how to plant or seed the Drengir.
Yes. So at some point I think it's at the Republic Fair, right? It's mentioned that one of the Padawans or something, I think, sees this, and they see the Nihil planting seeds, which appear to be like sporing Drengir plants, and they're planting them on Valo. So it's almost like the Nihil have found a way to spread the Drengir to other planets and let the Drengir just take over because they know just how deadly they are. So they're almost like, let's just screw this planet over. Boom, here's some Drengir seeds, and then let's just, hitch a ride and run kind of thing. Let the Drengir have this planet and kill a bunch of people and stuff. Just adds more chaos, right? Because they want the Republic and the Jedi, very similar to the beginning of Attack of the Clones. This conversation exists in this book and that movie where the Jedi are not an army. And they don't have an army. The Republic is not really militarized. And in this book, the conversation of a Republic defense force comes up a lot. And it's an ever-present discussion that they're trying to have in order to fight off the Nihil and the Drengir and all this and that. Because right now, all that exists is just the Jedi. And there's not enough for the entire galaxy. And they're dealing with the Nihil. Right, and local forces, right. And so that's kind of why this Hutt alliance is so crucial, because the Jedi need allies. And the Hutts have resources to fight in their territory. And if the Jedi don't fight in that territory, there's a lot of innocent people in that territory, which obviously they care about. Plus the initiative to expand to the Outer Rim, the Jedi seek the Hutts' help to help defend their territory as a way of being like, look, you don't want them taking over your space. We don't want them taking over your space and killing a bunch of people. Let's work together and fight these things, right? And they're also spread thin, not to mention all the politics and stuff with the Republic Fair. There's a lot of stuff going on. So the Nihil are kind of taking advantage of this. And so I thought it was really interesting that they are planting these seeds, because they're aware of the fact that they're spread thin, and they're like, let's just add more to the mix, you know?
That's their strongest advantage, right? So they got to press that, because they're outnumbered significantly. Right. They're on the offensive.
Yeah, exactly.
And their only option is guerrilla tactics.
Yeah. I thought what was really cool is we got the Togrutas showing up in this book, and conversations there with them having a bit of a rickety, a rocky past with the Republic. I don't know where that history is as far as prior to the High Republic, or where they're pulling that from, but apparently that's the state that things are in. And they do show up to Republic Fair, and that alliance seems to be getting a little stronger. So it looks like they're kind of integrating the Togrutas into the Republic at this point in time. For anyone who doesn't know, a Togruta is the same species as Shakti or Ahsoka Tano. It's that alien species. And a bit of a fun fact in this book that their mantrails offer an echolocation ability, which I didn't realize that that's what those were for, but apparently they are. So yeah, I thought that was cool. Like we got a lot of chapters where the leader of the chief, I guess, of the Togrutas
she's a lead huntress.
Thanks. Yeah. Yes. So she showed up a lot in the story and was there for the attack on the Republic Fair and all that stuff. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah, it was interesting kind of looking into their culture a bit, because we don't see them too often. I think the only time we really saw them was Clone Wars, when they're rescued from the slavers.
Yeah, that's right. They had very little appearances as far as a people goes in the Clone Wars, and let alone in Star Wars in general. It's not like they're the most common alien species to see. Definitely nowhere near the commonality of seeing a Twi'lek or you know, someone of a general alien species that are kind of common. But I thought it was cool that they thought of bringing that conversation in, because as far as an expanding galaxy goes, it's almost like they looked for planets that may have not necessarily been in the Republic very long, and then decided to add that to the conversation. And it just makes the Republic Fair a little more interesting, because I remember us cracking some jokes about that being the plot line for this book, or this next wave of stories. And I'm like, okay, what the heck? Like, you know, what could be so interesting about that? But there is some interesting things, and it's not like it's a dead conversation. It's like, I do like the fact that they're getting into that subject material. Not that I want to linger on it, but it at least adds some flavor. So
speaking of flavor, I was disappointed that this was a big fair event and there was no pie eating contests. Is that a thing they do? County fairs?
I'm sure at some point in the fair there was probably you know,
a pie or a hot dog eating contest or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I feel like they should have had Elzar Mann show up, and he had a challenge like the top eater of the pie eating contest. Should have been a whole chapter.
Should have been a featured moment right there. Yeah, exactly. I thought this was kind of an interesting thing as well. The Race to Crash Point Tower novel that also came out, which is the sidelining storyline to the Republic Fair ordeal in the junior novel. That takes place at the same time as this chaos is happening on Valo, and it is a featured side storyline in some of the chapters with some of the characters that do show up. There was a character named Ram. He had a stupid name. It was like
Is it Ram Jam? Thank you, man.
Ram Jamaram. That's his name.
My gosh.
Ram Jamaram. Yeah.
I can't believe I was half right.
He was a Jedi Padawan, and he's the one who discovers the Nile trying to sabotage the Valo's communications. And in this book, the communications just go down. But in the Race to Crash Point Tower, that's his story in this book, and he does show in this book as well. So it's almost like when that book is complete, that's when he shows back up in this novel. So I thought that was worth mentioning, that these books kind of take place simultaneously.
Does that mean, just like with the movies, you're going to reread these books and switch to the other book at the right time and then switch back?
No. I did that with Clone Wars finale, and I'm stopping there.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Out of the Shadows is the third novel, the young adult novel that takes place in this same time frame. I don't know the details on whether it overlaps with this story or not, but just in case anyone's like, what else is going on right now? It would be that story as well as the ongoing Marvel comic story. There's also some interesting things I found. I was looking at StarWars.com, and I thought this was kind of worth going through with you. And then we can kind of wrap up the conversation on this. So six answers the Rising Storm delivers, and 7 questions it raises. That's what the article's called. So number 1, Chancellor Lena So's Targons, which are those big lion beasts that she has next to her.
Yeah, her pets.
They know how to kick butt. We saw some action with those in battle, which was pretty sweet. Brought up the Torguta Montreal thing. Interesting relationship with the Republic. Already talked about that. The Jedi do, in fact, form attachments. We already went over that. Elzar Mann's deep connection with Avar Kriss. And Ember is the best co-pilot since Chewbacca. Ember is...
Belle's pet dog.
Yeah. The Nihil don't...
It growls through the whole book, and he's just talking to it. It's just like, "No, girl, you gotta get out there. You gotta help that kid. He's stuck in the well." He's like, and yes, the audiobook has actual noises.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it does.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's kind of like Lassie.
The Nihil don't waste any time when it comes to filling job vacancies. So yeah, the last book saw the destruction of Cassiv, one of the 3 Tempest runners. And his spot was filled by a new one called Zetar. And he wasn't really showing up too much in this book. He wasn't really a featured character, but... I
thought it was neat, though. What they talked about him was he's kind of a techie. So he like built himself a power suit.
He has like a mech suit, yeah. So I guess, maybe we'll see a little more of him in the future.
Though at the beginning of the book, it was him, Pan, and the Twi'lek lady. Forget her name, but they were kind of all like Lorna D. That's right. They were kind of butting heads for like top dog. Yeah. And then towards the end, tech guy, he kind of bowed out, letting Pan kind of become head honcho. I think Lorna kind of did too, but she seems kind of sneaky. I think she's gonna make a move again later.
Oh yeah, and speaking of Lorna, if you find her an interesting character, a 4th story and the last one that's worth mentioning that takes place, or sorry, 5th I guess, after the Marvel comics and Out of the Shadows and Race to Crash Point Tower, is an audio drama. It's the 3rd exclusive audio drama in the Star Wars license, and it's called Tempest Runner, and it's all about Lorna D is kind of the featured characters. That just came out like a week ago, I think it was. So that's on Audible right now for anyone who's interested in learning a little more about the Nihil and Tempest Runners and possibly the character of Lorna D. And the sixth thing that we discovered from this article, at least, is Marchion Ro after the leveler, all that stuff. That leaves us 7 questions. What is the leveler? All right. It's a scary, beastly thing, devastating consequences. Apparently, Kevin Scott is very tight-lipped about any further details. That explains a lot as to why we didn't get too many things as to what this Jedi killing nightmare is all about in this book. But curious. It could be a terrible thing to Star Wars, or it could be kind of neat. You never know, right? So, one of the subplots was that lightsaber disabling machine. What do you think? Okay, so aside from the beast, what are your thoughts on the lightsaber disabling machine?
To me, that's more practical than the beast. I think the machine could just put out like a certain like magnetic energy that would just disrupt how lightsabers function. So, because it's not affecting the Force in any way, right? It would be because we know that lightsabers are created through a magnetic field. So it's just disrupting that magnetic field. To me, that's not that outrageous.
Right.
What the range could be, and the other question of if this has been discovered, what happened to the technology by the time we get to the movies?
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah. This might be what pushes lightsaber technology forward, which is why they look different in 200 years. So, yeah, who knows? What about Mari Santeca? That's the woman who's who's hooked up to that machine that Marchion Ro's exploiting for the paths, the hyperspace lanes and stuff.
Which character did she talk to through the Force?
I'm trying to remember. I totally forget. Was it Stellan Geo? No. I don't know. I totally forget. But we first met her in the last book, and she's referenced a few times in this book, but she's not really featured as a character.
Oh, it's the guy who's captured.
Yeah. Oh, Loading Greatstorm.
Great Storm. That's what I almost said. Storm Rage.
Yeah, he's talking to somebody. Yeah. Was it her? Is it her or is it somebody else?
Yeah. So she starts talking to him through the Force, and I think she basically offers some words of encouragement because he's still imprisoned at the time. Oh,
okay. All right. I didn't realize that was her. That's interesting. So now that some of the Nihil know that Marchion is in fact the gatekeeper of the paths, this Mari Santeca is likely to play a pivotal role in the future of the stories. And as we know, hyperspace will change forever after this storyline. So it could be that, the Santecas are responsible for having a computer that just calculates your hyperspace routes and boom, is Pan Eta dead? We last saw him escaping off to his home planet when the battle was wrapping up and the Nihil were losing. So I don't think he's dead, but he was in an escape pod and just shot off and disappeared. So what are your thoughts on that one?
That's a good question, because he was already kind of dying anyway.
He was like coughing up blood and stuff, and he knew that he was dying.
So what happened, if you recall, was he had 2 attempts to kill and overthrow Marchion.
Yeah. And
the first time Marchion takes off his helmet and gives it to him, and it electrocutes him, but he manages to crush the helmet and save himself before he's electrocuted to death. And the second time, he goes to attack Marchion, and Marchion pulls out a lightsaber, and when Pan goes to block the lightsaber, Marchion stabs him with a needle and injects him with something.
Like a toxin, yeah.
Yeah.
And Lorna saves him with an antitoxin, yeah.
Exactly. But after that, he starts coughing up blood and stuff. So instead of being killed, he now has some sort of toxic illness.
Yeah, or he just always had that, and he just knows that he's, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows, right? All we know is he's dying, and he's got to. He thought that he could at least screw Marchion over, but I guess that didn't work out. So it's interesting to think. I don't know what we're gonna see with him. A desperate guy like that on his last days is one of the most dangerous types of characters, I think, ever. So, because he's willing to go to, ends meet to do whatever, right?
Yeah,
so
it's like a wild animal trapped in a corner.
He's got nothing to lose. Yeah. So I thought when I was reading his last chapter that he was in, it was kind of funny because he was contemplating on going home, which is where it says no one in the Nihil would look for him there anyways. But then he had thoughts of like, oh, he wonders if his family's still there. It would bring him great pleasure to kill them all. And I was like, what kind of a twisted like dude is this? Like wanting to go home only to kill his family? Like,
well, he talked about his backstory a bit, and his family like abandoned him in like the wilderness or whatever, and he had to like, he like
twisted.
He was like attacked by a tiger or something, and then he had to eat like cave slugs back to health. And then he went back and hunted down the tiger that attacked him, something like that.
He also had a bit of a love thing going on with Lorna D, but he kind of feels betrayed at the very end of his storyline in this book because he realizes that she's kind of screwed him over in the process of trying to undermine Marchion herself as well. So all that business. And number 5, how will the Republic recover from the Republic Fair disaster? My thoughts on this is that we're gonna see that Republic Defense Force thing come into play now in the 3rd book. I think like whenever the 3rd wave comes out for phase 1 of the High Republic, the Defense Force thing is gonna happen. Like we're gonna have some Republic military, approved, I guess.
It's interesting though, because wasn't that such a big deal in the prequel? So that Republic had never had a military.
They haven't said that. They just said that the Jedi weren't enough to fight, and they don't have a military by the time of the prequels. But one wonders as to why that is. I mean, if galaxy wide, there's been peace for 1,000 years, right? There's no Sith trying to take over the galaxy and all that. The Nihil aren't exactly taking over the galaxy, and Marchion Ro's been kind of expressive about that. He knows that that's just impractical to even do, right? Like they're not out to control the galaxy. They're out to just mess up the Jedi and like screw over the Republic and let them know that the Outer Rim is their territory and that's all they want, right? Like they're out to kind of wage war on them, but not necessarily do it in a sense that they're going to get themselves completely killed off.
They don't want to take over. They just want to carve out an area for themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas in the Clone Wars and stuff, it's a huge thing that half the galaxy is on the other side of a political fence. So, then it's like, well, they've got mass amounts of droid armies. Like we need an army, right? So at this point in time, it's a bit of a different conversation because they're looking at like, oh, there's going to be an attack on this planet or that planet. And that's all there is going to happen. But, do we have enough Jedi to handle that? That wouldn't even be a topic in the prequels, right? Like Geonosis happens once and clearly the clones are needed to even have a victory because the Jedi are nearly all killed off in the 20 minutes of the Geonosian battle, right? Before the Yoda shows up with all the clones and stuff. Yeah, they're being surrounded. And so clearly the Jedi aren't enough for an actual army, but the Nihil, the Nihil, as deadly as they are, it's still on the verge of being manageable, but the Jedi are kind of spread thin. And especially after this event where they did what they did, it's like, okay, I think the Jedi need some help because this is obviously a lot to do.
There's also that one senator though, who wants the Republic to be able to defend itself and not rely on the Jedi.
Right. Yeah. There's some support for military defense force. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But what are your thoughts on this? How are they going to recover?
I feel like it was introduced as a reason for it to show up. So it probably will happen. The military, that is. As far as recovery, I feel like they probably won't have another World Fair for a while.
Yeah, I feel your thoughts there. How will Elzar deal with his brush with the dark side? Are we going to have him be one of the lost Jedi that ends up with a statue in the Great Library, or are we looking at just an Ezra kind of situation where it's like he's got his brush, but that's all it's ever going to be.
As much as I'd like him to become a dark side user for interesting story purposes, I feel like it's going to be an Ezra story.
Yeah. I feel that too. I think it's going to be something that just makes his character what it is, and he just struggles with that. I think we're for sure going to get Ty York joining him up as a Padawan, or even just a partner in, just in working with the Jedi, maybe as like a co-conspirator sort of thing, an ally. I could see that happening, very likely, them working together a lot in the future, especially after this Force connection thing. So
yeah, I think they're definitely going to become like a master apprentice situation at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And the last thing is, will Kit Repso and John Lauren be able to make a long distance relationship work? The endearing side story, Chancellor, the endearing side story of Chancellor So's son Kip and his budding romance with Valen Mayer, Nas Lauren's son, Jom, was a touching ray of hope during the grim happenings of the Republic Fair. With Starlight Beacon making galactic communications a bit easier, we can hope that these two make it work. I have no opinions on this, and I didn't even... maybe my mind just skipped over this part in the book. It was not important to me at all. But
what was their name?
Will Kitreps... Kitrepso is the name of the Chancellor's son. And... John Lauren. Let me just look up this name again.
At first, I was picturing that side story with the Dennis, the guy who's like trapped under the rocks. That Belle had to help. Dennis, and then that like the damsel woman.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about.
Right. No, this is something else. Jim was such a small part in this book that there is no Wikipedia page for him set up yet, I guess. So we're going to skip over that one. But if anyone out there has already read this book and be listening to us, let us know your thoughts on that question. And that is 6 answers and 7 questions from The Rising Storm. Is there anything last minute that you want to bring up that you thought was really interesting?
I just want to say that I feel like the Jedi are really boring in this franchise. but I really like the Nihil, so I'd rather just read books about the Nihil.
Right. So then
like,
Tempest Runner, the Tempest Runner audiobook is it's going to be more interesting to you, I think.
Yes, it's worth checking out. I know there's a young reader book that we reviewed a while back.
Light of the Jedi or Into the Dark?
Into the Dark, I think.
Sorry, Into the Dark or the...
I think it was Into the Dark because it started off about
a Test of Courage. That was the other one. A Test of Courage was the Light Whip one. That was the junior. No,
yeah, it's that
was
one.
The junior one. Okay,
because it started off the first handful of chapters about the Nihil character. So I thought, oh, cool, this book's actually going to be about this character.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it switched and never went back. So I got kind of annoyed by that.
Yeah, it's true. Tempest Runner then definitely for you.
Honestly, they're the most interesting part of this era because they're essentially, if you like Mad Max, they're basically the groups of raiders from Mad Max, which is such an awesome like sign of character. They're kind of like Vikings in a post-apocalyptic world. You can kind of think of them. Yeah,
exactly. So this. Yes, this story is mostly about Lorna D and her, I guess, her story of being captured by the Jedi and such. And there's a publisher summary on the Wikipedia page, but it's 360 minutes, also written by Captain Scott, which is the author of this novel. So plays into this story very well. And I now understand why she was one of the featured characters of this book, because they knew that she was going to get her own tale. So we'll see what happens there. There's the High Republic is kind of a vast story as far as phases and waves and all this content that's been coming out. So if anyone watched the announcement for this, and just as a refresher, the High Republic is going to be a multi-year initiative, which will lead up to Disney Plus's The Acolyte, which takes place at the end of the High Republic era, about 50 something to 70 something years before the Phantom Menace. It's something like that. The first phase is called Light of the Jedi. Second phase is called Quest of the Jedi. And the third phase is called Trials of the Jedi. Each phase has up to 3 waves in the phase. So the first phase had wave 1, which contained the Light of the Jedi book, Into the Dark, and A Test of Courage. The second wave of phase 1 is now The Rising Storm, Tempest Runner, Out of the Shadows, and Race to Crashpoint Tower. We will be getting a third wave. Mind you, the Marvel comics kind of weave in and out of all this stuff. Third wave comes out, I think, in December/January. And then phase 2 will come out kind of next year in spring/summer. And again, there'll be multi-waves for those as well. This is kind of supposed to go for like 3 years. Like the end of the High Republic is going to be like 3.5 years away. So
that's a lot of books.
Yes, it's a lot of books. It's a lot of comics. It's a lot of everything with this High Republic label. So this label is not going away anytime soon. And hence the reason why we've just, as a podcast, I guess, just focused in on getting familiar with this era. And, it's not to say that we're going to, if there's going to be that much stuff, we might not review absolutely every book or anything, but so far, at least the ones that we have read and have reviewed, it's been nice to kind of understand what this is all about, because this is a whole new era that we've never seen before in the franchise. And, to be able to talk about it and understand what's going on, at least in this point in time, is good to know, right? As a hardcore Star Wars fan goes, it's always good to know that stuff. So, yeah.
I'm curious though, like from the timeline of the first book to the Disney Plus show in universe, what's that gap of time? Have they announced that?
Yeah, so the High Republic takes place close to 200 years before the Phantom Menace. And I think it's 200 years. And the Acolyte is about 50. So the High Republic is about 100 and so odd to 150 years worth of time.
That's disappointing to me, because that means, because let's be honest, the Nihil is not going to last 150 years.
No, it's not. Yeah, and here's the other thing about that is we could see all 3 phases just kind of like the sequels, just jam-packed in a small amount of time, which would kind of suck. Like, I would like to see the progression. What I really love about how this is the only trilogy that does this, how the prequels did it was it spanned the length of like 15 or more years, right? Like there was gaps of time, like between episode 1 and 2 there's a solid 10 years, and then between 2 and 3 there's a solid like 3 years, and then between 3 and 4 there's a solid 19 years. Like there's big gaps of time, and in those gaps there's potential for more story. So I hope that these 3 phases, being the next 3.5 so odd years worth of books and stuff, don't just get crammed into like 5 years worth of events. Like I really hope that like phase 1 stories take place at this point in time, and then phase 2 is going to flash forward like 50 years, and characters that we've been familiar with, like Avar Kriss or whatever, just are gone, right? They're just dead, like of old age or whatever, and they're just no longer, like it focuses in on another set of characters. And we might see some good progression there, and then we'll start to meet the masters of Jedi masters that we know from the movies and stuff like that. Like that could be really cool. And then that'll lead into the Acolyte show, whatever that's going to be about. So
I see what you're saying. That's kind of neat. But I also wonder if I'm going to be able to remember that many characters going into the show.
It is overwhelming. Honestly, a book like this, which being one of the pillar books of this franchise, The Rising Storm and The Light of the Jedi focused in on so many characters. And that to me was very overwhelming at times, because, when it's a long book and I've got a very short attention span. So if I read one chapter on a day and then I pick it up the next day, I have trouble remembering what I read the day before. So it's, unless it was important, if it's not important and it's just kind of a fluff chapter, then I really don't care too much. Half of the beginning half of this book, I honestly could not tell you what, like, exactly what happened, because it was all just so fluffy until the battle
Agreed.
stuff, and the last half was better. But the first half, I'm like, it's just gray in my head. I'm like, I couldn't tell you. So yeah. Anyway, did you have any kind of last minute things? We're kind of hitting our time here, I guess. Last minute things, chat about anything?
I think a good way to sign out is disappointment of no Nihil in the show, because to me that's the coolest villain. So
did you want to give your Pablo points? What is it? Is it Pablo points? We're going with Pablo points.
I think that's what it is. Yeah,
as a scoring currency. Yeah,
man. So I don't remember what I gave the last one. I might have gave it like a 4, maybe even
I think it was 4. I think
the
it was
last
4,
one
4.5.
was pretty good. This one, I like the Nihil stuff. I don't keep bringing that up, but it was actually a really small section of this book. But just seeing within their ranks, and I thought of it honestly as Markion, because he's a really clever villain. He's kind of he feels like a villain that could be from a Sherlock Holmes book.
Yeah.
So with that being a part of it, but also being a very small section of the book, I'd probably give it, like, at best a 2.5 out of 5 Pablo points.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think between 2.5 and 3. On my Goodreads review, I put 3 stars, but you can't really put half stars. So I just decided to round up. Half the book was good. Like, half, the later half, that is. The Republic Fair opens up at chapter 19, and there's a lot of just fluff between that and when the Nihil attack. And
yeah,
it just felt really slow in the beginning. And I feel like Light of the Jedi started off with a boom, right? Like, it started off with good, exciting, great disaster, everything just like,
yeah, no, I agree with that.
And this one was different.
I also thought, I think this was the case for the last book. I probably didn't bring it up, but it's becoming more of a problem now, is there's just too many characters.
Yeah, it did come up when we were reviewing the last one. It's a lot of characters to digest in a new era, which we're very unfamiliar with these characters. I would honestly, I know StarWars.com has got like a whole section dedicated to the High Republic and everything. Releasing a free PDF online with just like, profile pics of profile pages of just, this is this character and a quick write-up about them would very much help. Like a companion PDF or something to the High Republic, like a guide to these books and stuff, this multimedia thing that's coming out would be so helpful. And if anyone's listening out there who wants to make one of these things and just spread it around, send us the copy, because that would be so helpful.
Honestly, it would be, because if you're just going off names, they kind of, like, most of them are Jedi, and they kind of all feel about the same, excluding Elzar.
Yeah.
So half the time I don't even know who we're talking about when I was listening to the book.
like Stellan Gios and Loden Greatstorm, to me, kind of, aside from the fact that Bell is Loden's Padawan and stuff, they kind of just blend as a similar character in my head somewhere, because I'm reading these on pages and not necessarily listening to voices of these characters. So to me, they're like, I'm like, oh, right, he was here and knows these people, and this guy's the other one. And
it's almost like they're doing a Game of Thrones thing where they're making so many characters they can kill them off and keep going.
Yeah, very much so, for sure.
Which might end up happening. But the problem, this is because I read the Game of Thrones novels, and this is the same problem, where you read about one character for a few chapters, and then you go on to the next chapter into someone else, and there's so many characters, but by the time you get back around to the first character, you can't remember what they were doing.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's true. And when you're watching the show, even, it's like, it's a show you got to binge. Otherwise, watching it, when I was watching it week to week or however spaced apart the episodes were, it's like, Oh yeah, what happened with him last year in season 3? You know, it was like I was like living off of the recaps of like what came before. So, speaking of what came before, as far as stuff that's currently came out, as far as wave 2 of phase 1 goes, there will be a third wave to phase 1, and January 18th, The Fallen Star will be the sequel to this book, and it'll be written by Claudia Gray. It'll continue the main arc of the story and face the Jedi against their greatest threat. The Eye of the Storm will be written by Charles Soule, also the author of Light of the Jedi. Publish will happen also in January and will reveal the backstory of Marchion Ro, leader of the Nile. Charles Rowe's kind of like the peak author who did the first staple novel in this series. So for him to write the backstory of his villain, it'll be good. Like, I'm looking forward to that. Midnight Horizon will be by Daniel Jose Older, also coming next year, as well as Mission to Disaster, published by Justina Ireland, also coming next year. I can imagine those being the junior and young adult novels. So that's wave 3 of phase 1, I guess. And that'll be all of phase 1. And yeah, so lots of stuff coming. Looking forward to all of it. And overall, you know, 2.5 to 3 Pablo points for this guy. So if anyone's interested in picking that up.
So 2.75 Pablo points.
2.75 Pablo points.
That's right.
That's right. All right, cool, man. That was an extensive review there, but I feel like we nailed it. So, thanks for coming back on the show as always. In the near future, we've got a new setup that we're gonna have going for the show, thanks to your generous contribution in this esteemed equipment here that I have next to me on my desk. And
hey man, it's a team effort, you know. We're all in this together.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna be able to at some point in the near future host live shows. So that being said, it's gonna be a bit of we're gonna have to get used to this new setup of equipment and everything. But hosting live shows could be really cool because it means that we could tape live calls and this and that. So anyone listening, share this show with your friends, all that stuff, because that way we can get the word out there about the title of this podcast and kind of grow the audience a little bit. And that way live shows can actually be a little more interesting. So
I'm also probably most excited for the soundboard.
Yeah, soundboard's going to be awesome. You know, we're going to be able to control our effects on the go a lot better. So that'll be great. Anyway, that's it from me, and I guess we'll catch you in the next one.
Got a blast.
All right, thanks guys for tuning in, and as always, the best way to help us out, honestly, is by sharing the show with a friend, just tagging a link to our Podbean site or one of the Spotify or whatever. Just share it on social media, tag us in the post. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at SW Escape Podcast. Of course, our email's in the description below, swescapepodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to drop a voicemail, and even if you send a voice memo into our email, that's great too. We'd love to hear from you guys. Emails are always welcome. Any recommendations, subjects to cover, hot tips on stories, anything like that, we'd love to hear about it. So let us know your thoughts. And we do have, like I mentioned earlier, we have gone on the path to upgrade how the show is done. And in the process of that, of course, buying new microphones and everything, a bunch of people in my inner circle have all bonded together and gifted me the Rodecaster Pro, Blake being one of those people. So it's really exciting time, and in a month from now we're going to be able to host live shows and all that stuff. So spread the word about this podcast, because it's going to get a whole lot better, and it's going to sound a whole lot greater. So looking forward to that. One book I forgot to mention from the wave 2 of phase 1 of the High Republic is actually called The Edge of Balance. Recently came out about 4 or 5 days ago, and is the first volume of a manga series. So be sure to check that out as well, among the other recommendations from the High Republic. We'll see you guys in the next episode, and may the Force be with you.